Good morning, everyone. Welcome to MaaSive and Shift2MaaS Project Final Showcase. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I hope you can see the screen and hear me well. In case you have any technical difficulties, as we all know and learned over the last year, these tools that we use to communicate in the times of pandemics can be flimsy. So feel free to jump in and jump out if you need to. Regardless, I am very happy to welcome you today to this event, during which we will present two projects, namely MaaSive and Shift2MaaS, two innovation projects that are co-funded by Shift2Rail joint undertaking under the Horizon 2020 program. My name is Aneta Tumilovic, and I am from Network Rail in the UK, and I will be your host today and guide you through the presentations that you will see, and hopefully you will enjoy today's presentations as much as we hope you would. You will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the day, and we welcome all the questions that you may potentially have, and also, if you would like to get in touch with us after the meeting, you will see contact details from all presenters as they presenting their slides. Okay, next slide, please. So as you can see, we do have a rather packed agenda for today, but we decided to divide it into 4 main sections based on the type of presentations and the subjects of presentations. We are also very excited about having with us the representative of Shift2Rail joint undertaking, Esther Bravo, and also we have a special guest, our keynote speaker, who will be having a little bit of an intro before we start presenting any of the project results. As you can imagine, 4 hours across presenting results from 2 projects may be not nearly enough to actually show everything that we've done over the project duration. Therefore, as I said, please do get in touch with presenters or myself, and we are happy to discuss everything that we've done within our projects in more detail, should you wish to. Okay, without any further ado, I think we can move on to our first agenda item, and it is indeed a intro from Esther Bravo, who works for Shift2Rail joint undertaking as one of the program managers. And in fact, she is responsible for the innovation program 4, under which both our projects are actually contributing to. Esther, over to you.
Okay, Aneta, thank you very much. Thank you very much for organizing this event and for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here today. It has been a really long journey since we started. I have to say that this project have contributed to the objective of the IP4 program. Well, as many of you know, the IP4 program has the objective to develop IT solutions for passengers to achieve a seamless multimodal travel across Europe. And these 2 projects has contributed to include the mobility as a service functionalities, contributing to deliver Shift2Rail capabilities in order to shift to more sustainable mode of transport. I would also like to highlight that these 2 projects have also been a really good example of complementarity, that in Shift2Rail we give a lot of importance, because this complementarity between projects that are developed by members and also open core projects contribute to successfully achieve results to move from the technology to the real field. we know that we had this crisis, this coronavirus crisis, but thanks to this complementarity and this continuous collaboration, we are going to see the good results that these two projects has achieved. And I also would like to thank the coordinators of these two projects, Aneta from Network Rail and Daria from UITP, for their continued collaboration and communication with Shift2Rail joint undertaking. Well, and we have seen also the good teamwork that these two projects have done together with the cohesive project that you will see an overview afterwards. And also, I would like to thank all the beneficiaries for their work in order to achieve the expected results. I'm really looking forward for this event. Thank you very much again, and I give the word now to Aneta.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you very much for your kind words. And now I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Daria Kuzmina from Shift2MaaS project, who is actually going to introduce to you our first keynote speaker. Daria, over to you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say that today we talk about MaaS and MaaS technologies. So that is why I appreciate Martin Rohlich, who agreed to make a presentation on benefits of MaaS today. He's innovation manager at Östra in Hanover, and besides it, he's also the partner DMO Digital Mobility Consultants. And since 1999, he has been managing different projects on combined mobility and mobility innovations. And besides his main work, he is a vice chair of UITP Combined Mobility Committee, and within VDV, that is a German Association of Public Transport, he chairs the working group on multimodality mobility. So Martin, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. Thanks, Daria. Thanks, Aneta, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. So thanks for having me on this massive event on MaaS. So I'm very dedicated to MaaS. So it's really a pleasure to have to be the speaker for the keynote here this morning. So I would like to take over the control. So is that working, or may I ask you to give me that? Okay, so I like to talk about the benefits of MaaS, and as usual, you have this triad of three categories: the provider, the user, and the public. And so next slide, please. Instead of boring you with fully packed slides full of facts and figures, I decided to have a more lively presentation by telling the story a little more different, by calling some similarities to a concert hall, and I think they could illustrate the benefits a little more easy or understandable, and maybe it's a little more fun to start this long day of event with this kind of story. So next, please. So when you go to a concert hall or you want to listen to music, so as a user or as a listener to this music, so the first benefit of a concert hall is that you don't have to play the music yourself. So you can just have somebody else doing it. And also you can choose from a selection of different pieces and different performers. So you can have maybe just one performer, or you can have this whole orchestra. And when you look at an orchestra, it's not that there's only one instrument or one person playing one instrument each. So sometimes you have more than one violin or more than one cello. So it makes the music more rich. So it's maybe it's not really necessary, but it's just nicer music to have more people playing together and have a better coordination between all that. So that's the main benefit for the music. So the next slide. And speaking about the access, so it's also the similarity to mobility as a service. We have what you could call orchestrated music as a service. So you just buy the ticket and somebody else does the organization. You have the room and you can just enjoy the music. So you are the kind of a customer to the music and you enjoy it as a service. So it's pretty easy. And you might think, oh, what a cool idea to have a concert hall and an orchestra. So nobody actually can imagine to have an orchestra music, anything else. To organize it yourself, you won't do it. So you just buy a ticket, go to a concert hall, and that's it. And so the idea of mobility as a service is just the same transfer to mobility. So maybe in a couple of years, people would ask themselves, so why didn't we have this very cool idea of mobility as a service much earlier, as we had with other services like music? Okay, the next. So when you look at the provider, okay, so when you are a piano player, so you can enjoy people with your music. So the piano is a very nice instrument. I learned it as a child, and so you can do music yourself. But you will also benefit from someone who organizes the event, and you don't have to bring your own piano. You just go on the stage and play your music. So it's one benefit that someone organizes it. And the next slide. But when you're a triangle player, so it would be hard to have a triangle concert or to sell any ticket just to play a triangle. So it really makes sense to be part of an orchestra or to be part of a larger show. So it's the only way to have a business as a triangle player, I guess, to be part of a larger system. And so you can really enhance the music. So sometimes you need a triangle at a certain point of a piece of music, but you don't want to hear it all the time, or it shouldn't be just the only instrument that you want to hear. So next slide. So transferring this idea of this orchestra to mobility as a service. So it's really about partnerships. So it brings people together. And sometimes it's the only way to have a business model, especially for the smaller service providers. So they won't be able to play themselves. So partnership and business models are the main benefits for the providers. And the third row is the public. Okay, so that's where it ends a little bit with the similarities to a concert hall. So that's why I showed a car and the idea to replace a car with a concert or an orchestra of different mobility services. So, but when you remember or think of the piano, so maybe the car is a little bit like the piano in music. So the car is very versatile. You can play almost every music piece with a piano, and it's also the same with a car. You can go to work, you can go for holidays, you can transport things. So the car is really a feasible solution for a lot of mobility trips, But maybe it's a smarter idea to have this combination of mobility services, including cars, and like an orchestra, to play different pieces and to enjoy different needs of the people. So the next slide. Okay, so that's the orchestra. Everybody maybe enjoys it, or it keeps people happy. And with mobility, the main benefit for the public would be it's more healthy and more sustainable and equitable transport solution to have something like this orchestra instead of car-only transportation. Okay, next slide. So the main benefit of MaaS, as I would see it, is that you have less cars on the roads, yet that you replace the car traffic with other solutions. And when you look at it, you have mainly two pillars. So on the left-hand side, you have the impact on the single trips. So by combining different modes, it would be able to switch from a car to public transport and other mobility services to have this travel chain and to combine it to a very good travel chain and a solution from A to B. Because maybe you need some service to go to the railway station or to do the last mile trip. But on the right-hand side, so I think that's also very, very important. You have impact on the overall mobility patterns. So in the end, you can replace maybe car ownership with this combination of mobility service. So it's on one side, it's just a single trip, and on the other side, it's how your mobility behaviors in general and how mobility patterns will be changed by MaaS. So the next slide. Okay, and so there are tons of studies on the results of benefits, and I just picked one from Gothenburg in Sweden, which is a little bit older, but it was very well studied by the university. And so just when you look at the left-hand side, so 50% of all users have changed their mode of transport and how they plan their trips. And when you look on the right-hand side, you see the proportion of people who increase the use of new mobility services like car sharing. That's a very high, huge proportion of people, and also bus and tram or public transport. It was a local MaaS project, benefited a lot. So the main idea of strengthening public transport and also to shift the modes towards more environmental friendly modes is really working with MaaS. So we have a lot of examples for that. But as always, the problem was or is that there are too few people already using this MaaS solution. So the problem is not the MaaS itself, it's how successful it is in the market. Okay, so to come to an end, the three nice pictures in the end. So the benefits of MaaS, and that's really the main and the key message is: imagine a world with less cars on the road, less cars moving, less cars parking. And when you look at our cities, how they look, they do not only suffer from all the vehicle traffic, but also they suffer from all the parked cars around that are heavily underutilized. So they stand almost more than 3 hours a day. And so with MaaS, you might be able to replace them by more by different modes and also by more utilized cars, because when you share it, you need just less cars to have the car option. So that's the illustration on the right-hand side. On the next slide is so just a Google image from an intersection. So how it looks today, or how it looked 2008, and how it looks 2015. So I think that's really mouth-watering on the benefits. And the last slide. So yeah, you just be creative. Imagine the cities with fewer cars, and you can green all the unnecessary roads and transform your city into a more lively and more sustainable city. And yeah, so that's, I think, the major lesson, that MaaS in the end will lead to less car traffic on the roads and less parked cars on the roads. And so that's in the end that's the highest benefit for the public, but it does have this benefit without dictating the way you have to move yourself. So it offers the people choices, and so that's really, I think, the smartest way you can change mobility patterns, not by dictating how people have to change, but to offer them smarter, cheaper and more versatile alternatives to their own car, so that they are really benefiting themselves from moving from their own car to MaaS. And that's my message for the introduction. And I hope you have a very successful event and all the outcomes from the project. I'm very interested to see them. And so, as I said, it's a pleasure to be the keynote speaker. So would be happy to stay in contact with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Martin. And indeed, thank you for this fascinating analogy, which I think suits our situation and our work on mobility as a service very well indeed. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your presentation. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Shift2Rail and in particular Innovation Program 4, under which both our projects operate, our next speaker, Marco Ferreira from Thales, France, is here to shed some light on this. So you will get a little bit of a context as to what we are working on within a wider ecosystem that Shift2Rail Innovation Program 4 has created. Marco, over to you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. As Anita said, I will give you a brief overview of what is IP4 and how we built a research ecosystem where we can develop some functionalities to improve our multimodal ecosystems and how to reach this kind of MaaS approach in some way. So, going to the first slide, the IP4 objectives, so the Innovation Program 4 objectives are mainly to reach the ability to provide to the travelers multimodal travel offers across the entire Europe, so from door to door. And for that, we needed to put the travel in the center and facilitate the access to rail and other transportation modes access to them, and also to try to attract them from the roads to these new modes. In this program, we are doing it by providing a one-stop shop access to all the multimodal travel services that we are using on this ecosystem. This is done through an Android application that the traveler can use. And also, of course, one of the biggest objectives is to have as much coverage of Europe possible. So we also needed to build an open framework that allowed all the transport service providers across Europe to join this ecosystem in the easiest way possible and limiting the impact of changes on their systems, so that they can be part of this ecosystem without doing big changes on their existing systems. So next slide. So here we can see a small overview of the architecture of our ecosystem. So as you can see, the center is what we call the travel companion. That is this application that the passenger uses, that behind has a cloud wallet that stores all the provide functionality to the user, like to have his own account and to store his data, his tickets, and all the information about the trips that he plans or he already issued. And below this travel companion application, we have different mobility services. So the first one is the travel shopping, that is basically a journey planner that is able also to calculate offers for each trip. Of course, these trips can be multimodal, and this travel shopping component is able to combine offers from different operators and apply some business rules to provide good offers to our travelers. We also have what we call booking and ticketing system that allows also to do some reservation if necessary of a seat or of just a place to travel, and also to issue digital tickets to our travel companion and to enable us to travel. Also in the middle we have the trip tracking building block that it's responsible to collect different data from the ecosystem and provide the better information possible to the traveler about their trips. Of course, this information is personalized to the trips that the traveler is doing, and he is not bothered about other things around. Anyway, to provide all these functionalities, the ecosystem is not able to do it by itself, so it relies on data or services provided by the transport service providers. And as I said, we needed a framework to connect all this ecosystem to the internet and to all the transport service providers. This interoperability framework is basically getting all the services from the transport service providers and using semantic technology to convert them into an ontology that is understandable by all the components of the ecosystem, and it is in that way that we can fasten the way that we onboard transport service providers in our ecosystem, and we are able to make these services reach the travelers. Of course, this ecosystem cannot be only focused on the traveler, so we also have some tools to the transport service operator that have been built. So we have one operator portal that provides some kind of tools for business analytics, so the operators can see some information and insights of what is happening on the ecosystem and how the data that is integrated here it's being treated. Of course, to provide booking and issuing, they also need to register their services and provide business rules to how to sell these tickets. In some cases, in the case of MaaS schemes, how the mobility packages can be built with their products, and all these tools are embedded on this operator portal. So going to the next slides, now we can see that Innovation Program 4, it have been started before that. It started in 2016, I believe, with the first projects. But on this roadmap, I would like to focus that the first major release that we had from this program was on 2019. You can see here that most of the technical projects are feeding results to the cohesive project that is integrating and responsible to demonstrate all the functionalities that are built on this program. And this was done the first time with this alpha release that have been reused for different demonstrations in the last months. Today, with the ending of MaaSive project that we are presenting today, we are reaching the second major release of this program, what we call beta release, so in the middle of 2021. And at the end of next year, we should have the final results of this program, also including the latest results of the projects ahead. So going to the next slide, I want to give you a brief overview of what was done on the first release, the alpha release, and then what have been added by MaaSive and other open call projects to this ecosystem. So starting to what were the bases of functionalities from this ecosystem. So basically, I already spoke a bit about some of them. So of course we need a user login and the ability to have preferences for the user to provide him personalized offers and everything he needs. If he have some disabilities, he have all this information stored in his account. So we have then functionalities for journey planning to get the best routes for their trips, shopping, so to be able to see the prices of the offers for these journeys. This is getting information, of course, from the transport service providers. Booking in the case of long-term distance on long distance transport modes like flights or rail. Ancillary services, so we are able to connect to the ecosystem's additional services, like, by example, if you need Wi-Fi or if you want to have a meal on your train, this can be pre-booked in the ecosystem. Then we had payment and issuing capabilities. So for payment, we have been using Google Pay as a payment service provider. And of course, then we get our tickets that enable us to travel. After getting the ticket, if there are something wrong with our trip, we have also after-sales services that enable us to cancel and get some refund, depending, of course, on the business rules established by the transport service providers connected to the ecosystem. And these were the functionalities basically to prepare our trip. And then on the right side, we have the functionalities that we have available during our trip. So my trip is basically just to see the information about your trip. Trip tracking is basically a system that, as I said, is behind calculating possible impacts or giving you the best information possible about your trip that can trigger some alarms in case of any disruption. But it can be a delay or some service that is cancelled, and the system will also then be able to calculate alternatives in that case, and basically it's starting a new shopping process for a new trip and cancelling the previous one. There are then other features for the travelers, like the ability to give spontaneous reports about what is happening around him, and this will improve the information that is given to the travelers around using the same transportation modes. We had also location-based experiences, basically providing some commercial offers and guiding the traveler through the space to this, or providing some quiz games about monuments around him. There are some examples of these location-based experiences. And of course, the last one, to provide some guidance to the traveler with navigation and providing him information when he should catch the next vehicle, or when he should go outside the vehicle to catch the next one. And going to the next slide, we can also see what were the transport service providers that were integrated at this stage for the alpha release. So we can see that we had different services in Spain, in Madrid and Barcelona. We also had in Germany VBB integrated and DB. On the Netherlands, we had one simulated TSP with real data. also SNCB in Belgium and VAO in Austria. As you can see, there are different letters in each of them that represents the level of integration that we reached with each transport service provider, if they have shopping, booking, issuing, or what are the services that we were able to provide through our ecosystem, and also all the modes of transports that we had available. So next slide, please. So now I want to give you just a quick demonstration on how this application works. So here we are basically seeing a request of a trip from Barcelona to Madrid, where the user receives different offers using transportation modes. Also using, on this case, it's possible to use the car to reach a parking service and then catch the public transportation. So we are also facilitating some ways to access this public transport in the case of if no services there. Here we are just getting Wi-Fi services, so one ancillary service during our trip on the rail service. We can see all the details of the tickets that we are buying, and we can then pay for them and get the tickets that we need to do our trip. So having this trip, as I said, we are always calculating the best information possible to the user. Here we can see that we are getting one alert that our public transportation mode is delayed by 45 minutes. And of course, we need to find an alternative to our trip that is fastly calculated, and we can select another option to continue our trip. So the trip is very similar, but the start point is different, and the bottleneck on our previous trip was resolved, let's say. Then we need to go again through the booking process, and only on the last step we need to confirm that we want to cancel the previous trip to issue the new one. Okay. This is just the last step to buy our new tickets. And we get the new tickets that we need to our travel. Okay, we have another small scenario from Amsterdam to Berlin using different transportation modes. On this case, we are selecting one point in the map from where we want to go, and searching for this, selecting the date and the time. And on this case, you can see that we have offers including flights to do this travel, also offers including only rail services, and it's up to the traveler to select what is best for him. And on this case, he will select one with the flight. We can see all the details for the trip, and basically the process to book and issue is very similar. So I believe we don't need to go through all this process again. and it's one possibility that that the user have. It's just to save the trip and receive information about it if there are any change, and he will be able to issue later if he wants to. Okay, so this is it for the demonstration. We can go to the next slide, please. So what is new now for beta release? Basically, during the last 1.5 years, I believe, we have been improving all the functionalities that were done for alpha release. So improving architectures, performance, some of the processes that are behind those services. But of course, we also are introducing new functionalities. So if you can go to the next slide, please. And there are several of them. Some of them will be spoken today on the MaaSive topics in more detail, but I just want to give you a highlight of all the functionalities that we are integrating on this big ecosystem and to be available. So the first one, basically, we had our travel companion application that is now also available through a web portal. So in the way that we can also plan our trips on our laptop. This is the first one. The second is related to improvements on the user management. So we are now able to have guest users that can only plan journeys and see what are the best offers, but will not be able to do anything else than that. So for issue tickets, of course, you need some kind of registration, and also to allow the users to have different user profiles. So in a way that your preferences can be switched fastly if you are traveling alone, or if you are on a business trip, or traveling with your family. This can be easily done. Then we have also some functionalities that will be improving the way you may be traveling with your friends, or the way you share information about your trips. So first one is the simplest, just to share your trip information with another people, and they will be able to see it and also to get information about it if they want to. You have also group traveling, where you can set up like a group and invite people to your trip and issue tickets for your friends if necessary. And the last one is the travel arrangement facilitation, where one person, maybe by example in your office, can plan all your trips and just send you all the information and tickets to your account. Of course, we are also providing some functionalities related to MaaS. That is our main goal to reach, and we are doing it by providing the traveler with mobility packages. So on their application, they will be able to buy a mobility package that may have different offers from different TSPs, or just the ability to travel around when they want in a city, and also to consume items from these mobility packages when they book a trip. From best price optimization, there are several processes, but one of the best ones that I can give you, it's if the traveler is doing a lot of trips in a city, and he reach the price of all those tickets reach the price of the one mobility package that is available on this region. All these tickets may be replaced by this mobility package, and he will be able to continue traveling using this mobility package and having a better price for all their journeys. So next functionality that we are introducing on the system is the ability to calculate passenger rights and also to provide the travelers ways to do claims if there are something wrong with their trips. Also, we are giving the traveler the idea that he is using multiple tickets as one embodiment. So for him, he just have one application and shows the ticket that is available on this application. Also, regarding the location-based experiences, we are giving the one additional step. We are now not using our smartphone to provide these experiences, but we are also giving the ability to use mixed reality glasses like HoloLens to use these experiences. We have now also a library with points of interest that the travelers can see what is around them and what they can do during his free time. This library was done by my track project. That was one of the open calls with technical contributors for this ecosystem. We also have one new functionality that use the commuter detection. So this is basically using machine learning algorithms to detect the behaviors of the travelers and also facilitating them the planning of future trips if they have regular trips and they are a commuter. And the last one is we had built also a new application dedicated for kids. On this case, it has different interface and easier functionalities for the kids to use. Basically, they can plan a journey, use some kind of navigation, and request some help directly to their parents or the point of contact configured. And this summarizes the new functionalities for the traveler. But we also had an important effort dedicated to the transport service provider functionalities. On this case, for the travelers to have mobility packages, of course, they need to be built, and this is built directly by the transport service providers that are integrated on the ecosystem, or by a MaaS operator that is using this ecosystem, and they have now tools to describe their offers and to propose mobility packages to other stakeholders of the ecosystem. We have also what we call asset manager. Basically, one asset is one service that is integrated on the ecosystem, and it was done by the Sprint project open call that also provides a portal for the transport service providers to register their data and services in order for us to having asset to manage in our ecosystem. Now we have also finished our business analytics portal that is now also available, providing different insights of data to the transport service providers. In the case of the token generator and validation engine, this is dedicated for transport service providers that are still not able to generate digital tickets. So this is a tool for them to be able to generate them and to validate them after. Also, we are having a new inspection application, in this case with some features for fraud control. For trip tracking, we are now able to configure live some different rules for this system, being able to modify what is provided as information for the traveler. And then we have the mixed reality composer, that is the tool to build the mixed reality experiences for the travelers. This can also be done by the transport service providers and does not require us to build those. And the last one is the portal for customer relation management, where the transport service providers can also manage the claims from the passengers and calculate so passenger rights. So going to the next slide, as we finished all the new functionalities. So the system as today is integrating new transport service providers. On this case, we are having offers on Germany, Czech Republic, on Lisbon, and also in Spain with Malaga and Madrid. As you can see, some of the transport service providers are marked as green, that are transport service providers from Shift2MaaS project. And we already did some pilots with those tools on those cities with those operators from Shift2MaaS. So next slide. So as I said, we already did some pilots during the end of 2020 and starting of this year with the Shift2MaaS project. And we also are planning to have a new set of pilots in the next year with the two new projects that are running now, that are Right2Rail and IP4MaaS. And all these new pilots will be, of course, testing and validating all the technology that was now introduced on the beta release. And going to the next and I believe final slide, it's just a summary of the new cities that will be covered for the next pilots. And those are Barcelona, Padua in Italy, Athens, Osijek in Croatia, Warsaw in Poland, Brno and Liberec in Czech Republic, and also Helsinki. And if you go to the next slides, basically I ended my presentation, and if you have any question, I will be happy to take it on the Q&A session in some minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. So indeed, we will be using a dedicated question and answer session later on. So I will remind everyone how to use it. Just in case you can think of any questions to Marco Ferreira, you will be able to ask them then. And for our next presentation, I want to bring back to the floor Daria Kuzmina from UITP. Daria coordinates Shift2MaaS project, and indeed her session is about providing you with a short introduction to what Shift2MaaS project is about, so the objectives basically. Daria, over to you.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you for introduction. Please, may I ask you to the next slide? Yes, Shift2MaaS. So I would like to start my presentation from the short introduction of what Shift2MaaS is. So first of all, the full name is Enabling Mobility as a Service and Seamless Passenger Experience. So it was our main goal for this project. We tested IP4 functionalities in order to enable MaaS in different areas of Europe and try the cross-border seamless experience between different countries. Despite the project started in December 2018, the kickoff meeting was the beginning of 2019, and I'm very happy to say that in the consortium we had different stakeholders of transport sector. There was industry, there were technology consultants, there were operators, organizing authorities, and service providers, and it led us to cover all expertise in order to test the functionalities. Please, the next slide. And we had two goals. First of all, we promised to support the uptake of Shift2Rail IP4 technologies and overcome the different technical and non-technical barriers in order to adopt the new integrated mobility platforms. And in more details, the next slide, there were some so meaning that we did not develop the technology, so Shift2MaaS was not about the developing, but it was the supporting the existing technologies that were developed within the IP4 program from the beginning until this moment, and we focused on non-technical part. And as I said, I would like to say also in more details what exactly was performed. And in the next slide, you can see that we designed the pilots and we tested them in 3 European cities. And some of them, they will make a presentation about lessons learned later on during this final event. Also, we worked with the legacy systems of the operators involved in the pilot. We assessed the impact of the pilots, and so it means that we designed the evaluation framework, and there will be also a dedicated presentation on the approach we took in Shift2MaaS. And we also determined and analyzed the legal framework and behavioral aspects of the IP4 solutions from business logical point of view, from the creation of new business models, and from the behavior response of the passengers. And there will be also a presentation on the preliminary results of the stated preference survey that was conducted within Shift2MaaS framework. So, and if to summarize what Shift2MaaS is a cooperation, and next slide is telling this. And instead of thousands of words, we prepared a video telling about Shift2MaaS, what it is, what we were done, and what was achieved. So please enjoy. Sorry, there is no sound. Okay, thank you. No, there is still no sound. No, I'm sorry, but there is no sound. So I repeat it, there is a very nice music on the background. No, unfortunately, there is no sound. Okay, so if it will be not very successful, we might see with the subtitles, so good that there are subtitles as well. No, unfortunately, there is no sound. Okay, so maybe we can start from the beginning, but without the sound. Okay, thank you for showing this video. Unfortunately, the sound didn't work, but we will send the link in the Q&A session so you could enjoy the sound. And for now, you enjoyed 3-minute silence, but I think you liked the video as well. Thank you a lot. But anyway, my colleagues from Shift2MaaS project will say in details what were presented during this video. Thank you a lot. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Daria. Yes, indeed, you will still have a chance to see the video later on. And for the next session, I actually have a pleasure to introduce you to MaaSive project. So for all of you who just joined us, my name is Aneta Tumilovic. I work for Network Rail, where I coordinate MaaSive projects. Indeed, Network Rail is the project coordinator. So I will briefly just introduce you to what the project is about and the main objectives before we start showing you all the specific functionalities that we prepared for today. Next slide, please. Indeed, MaaSive project is a collaboration project among 6 partners from 6 different European countries, and as mentioned, coordinated by the Network Rail in the UK. We also have Hakon from Germany, Indra from Spain, Thales, Portugal and France, CS Group from France, and PKP, Polish State Railways from Poland. The project started in November 2018 and is coming to an end. And we have the overall budget of 13.4 million euros. Next slide. So what are the main objectives of MaaSive? So MaaSive is actually continuing and complementing the work that was already accomplished within previous IP4 projects, namely attractive and coactive. And we do those enhancements in the areas of travel shopping, which is supporting the single marketplace of all retail operations, which are currently spread over a large number of distribution channels. We also look into improving the areas of booking and ticketing. And by that, by booking and ticketing, we mean the way of unifying the way in which travel entitlements are specified and used by the travelers. We also are working on enhancing trip tracking, which aims at assisting the traveler by advising them of any foreseen difficulties en route and offering them alternatives in real life as well. And finally, we also look into improving the travel companion, which is the sort of end user interface that simplifies and actually masks all the complexity of information and data being used and managed behind the scenes, so the end user just see the functionalities sort of in the most simple possible user-friendly way. So the main objectives here for MaaSive are really to enhance those existing functionalities, and indeed during Marco's presentation you've seen that some of them, some of the functionalities that we are working on. We are naturally required to integrate a compatible approach that includes mobility as a service within the whole innovation program for ecosystem. And overall, we aim to enrich the traveler's experience. So we are innovating the system, we are innovating within the travel companion and all services sort of post-purchase as well, so the travelers can use the system in a seamless and non-problematic way. Next slide, please. So, in fact, the way that we look at beneficiaries of the project outcomes, we sort of decided that it's probably best to present them in the three main groups. So naturally, the first beneficiary of the outputs from the projects are the travelers. So by the implementation of all the functionalities that we are working on, and at the end of the innovation program 4, what is the objective is that the travelers will not be paying more than due. So we are offering the best price functionality. Naturally, this comes from the fact that the more services are on the market, the bigger competition there is, and therefore there is a guaranteed overall advantage for travelers, because not only that they have increased service variety, but also quality, and in the end they would be able to experience easy and smooth flow during the changing different transport modes. We've also naturally benefit travel service providers. The hope here is that MaaSive will reduce expensive and time-consuming process of the system integration. So the new functionalities will be integrated at ease, and anyone who will be joining the ecosystem will be able to do so without any massive changes to their legacy systems. Also, tools like already mentioned use of the mixed reality may offer a new revenue opportunities for the retailers and the station managers. And you will see later on during one of the presentations how this can be achieved potentially. And finally, for operators in general, because MaaS is, and the work that we do is underpinned by data, vast amounts of data, and the data analytics, the greater access to that data can mean that the operators will understand their end users better, and as such they can make their systems much more efficient and hopefully cheaper to run as well. So hopefully the whole ecosystem will decrease day-to-day operating costs, and therefore releasing some money that can be shifted elsewhere, for example, to focus on more passenger-orientated services. And that's MaaSive at a glance, really sort of high-level objectives and benefits. And that finishes my presentation of MaaSive as well. And you will have the opportunity to actually see a little bit more details about what we are doing and how we are doing it during the next sessions. So before we move on to that, however, we would like to run with you a small interactive session. So we hope we can engage you a little bit, and I'm doing this by posting at the moment a link in the chat area. If you click on that link, you will be able to participate in a short survey. So let me just enable this for everyone. Hopefully you should be able to see a link now in the question and answer section. So if you follow this link without any need for any registration, you should be able to write down what are, in your opinion, the main challenges for implementing pan-European MaaS. And if the system works, we should be seeing these answers live to see what it is that you think could be the biggest obstacle. As you have heard, MaaSive project and IP4 Innovation Program 4 aims are actually enabling mobility as a service at the European scale. So we are keen to learn, what do you think could be a challenge to actually implement this? So please have a look. There we go. We are getting some answers in. And indeed, they are very interesting. So we are seeing that one of the challenges could be data formats, lack of TSPs agreements, cheap flights. Ticketing can be a challenge. Interoperability seems to be taking the crown. So that's the way you see the answers. The bigger the word, the more people actually said the same thing. So clearly we have legislation, interoperability, and regulation. Data protection, one of them. Okay. I'm going to give it another 20 seconds maybe, so everyone has a chance to have their saying. Business model seems to be taking prominence as well. Legal rules, so yeah, legislation will be one of the obstacles, no doubt about that. Business models, yes, that's a very good point as well. Someone has said TSP willing to share data. Yes, we all know that this may be taking some convincing as well. And okay, that's really great. Well, thank you for participating. This is really great. I'm glad to see that you're still with us and still actively participating. So we thought it will be a good break before we actually move on to the next session. And I'm going to ask my colleague to bring the slides back up. And there we are. So indeed, our second part of today's presentation, we grouped as a under the heading of new ways of mobility. And our first presenter, can I get the next slide, please? Our next presenter is Juan Manuel Castro Arias from Indra. Indra is a partner in MaaSive project. And Juan is here today with us to talk to us about creation of mobility packages that are based on mobility as a service. Juan, over to you. Okay, Juan, I think you are live. Just make sure you are muted. Yes, you are.
Yes, okay, thanks. I was not aware. Okay, thank you very much, Aneta, for your presentation. As Aneta was saying, I'm working in Indra as Innovation Project Manager. We as Indra, we are responsible of the interoperative framework that is not part of MaaSive, but is one of the core components of the ecosystem. And we are also responsible of the booking and ticketing activities. In this section, we will talk about the mobility packages related to the mobility as a service. As it has been explained before, mobility packages is not a new concept. Is something that has been around us since public transportation. And but here in terms of mobility as a service, we will put it at the next level. In this presentation, I will focus on the technologies that has been developed in MaaSive to promote this mobility as a service and to facilitate its creation and implementation. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So first of all, just to be all in the aligned, what is a mobility package? A mobility package is a package of mobility products that are provided by different travel service providers, or TSP as we call them. If you have used public transport, you have already used mobility packages. In almost every city, there is always a public car that allows you to use different modes of transport. So this is a mobility package. What we are working here is to put it, as I said, at the next level. That is, first of all, allow different operators to create these mobility packages. So instead of only train, metro, or bus, we want to include also bike sharing, for example, even taxis, etc. So this will be the next step of the mobility packages. And what are we bringing? As I said, technologies to facilitate this creation. So what is the explanation, the section will be divided from both sides, the travel service providers and the passengers. So which is the interest for the passengers? That these mobility packages are cheaper. Instead of buying them separated, are cheaper. So every passenger is interested on acquiring one of these mobility packages to travel cheaper than before. And in terms of technology, you will see in the video that is quite easy and simple to purchase these mobility packages and start using it at the very same time. From the travel service provider, promoting these mobility packages will bring you more clients, because the collaboration now, it's clear that is what is going to come and is going to be present. And the tools that we are providing will show you how easy it is to create mobility packages and put them alive for the users. Okay, next slide, please. So first of all, from the travel service provider. So there are like 2-3 steps that needs to be done. First of all, the TSPs needs to import their tariffs to the CMMP. That is a component that has been developed in the ecosystem. Basically, they need to upload a NetX file. NetX is a standard of transportation that covers almost everything in terms of transportation. So they need to upload the tariffs that they want to make available. And this is the first part. Once the tariffs are available, then we have another actor, what is called MaaS operator, or you can call it a retailer. It could be a TSP or it could be another actor. This MaaS operator is responsible of the mobility packages. So they need to discuss with the different TSPs which are the products that they want to include in the mobility package, and they will create this new mobility package that is in terms of mobility as a service. And once everybody, all the actors that are part of this mobility package have validated, it will be available for the users. So next slide. From the passenger side, everything that happened before is transparent for the passenger. They will not know how it happened, but they will reach the travel companion, go to the new mobility package section, and they will see all the different mobility packages that are available and they can use. So they will select one, they can purchase it online from the same application, and then they will have it ready on their profile. The objective of these mobility packages is that once the user is planning to organize new trips, the trips will not be purchased again because the mobility package will get a consumption of the mobility package. So the purpose of this concept is that this functionality is also transparent for the legacy systems of the TSPs, because they will not have to modify their validation tickets, because the user will always validate a ticket provided by its own system. So next slide. This is a summary of the components that allows this functionality. As I said, the CMMP, where we have included a new module where for the generation of these mobility packages that basically allows to import tariffs and allows to create these mobility packages. The mobility package orchestrator that has two main functionalities provides the catalog to the users where they can select one of these mobility packages, and secondly, it will take into account the usage or consumption of these mobility packages. And finally, the travel companion that has been modified to allow this functionality for the user. In the next slide, we have a video that, let's see if we have sound. I think so, yeah. That explains
mobility packages
the process.
Combine products from different transport service providers, or TSPs, to promote multimodal travel, collaboration between TSPs, and cheaper transport for the traveling public. The following scenario demonstrates platform functionality and speed of deployment, including workflow of both TSP and MaaS operators. The MaaS operator is responsible for the collaboration between TSPs and the sale of the actual mobility package. Step 1. Public Transport Operator. Our hypothetical company, Bus Madrid, logs into the operator portal to access the various IP4 tools. By navigating to the contractual management marketplace, an area of the platform that allows the creation of multi-operator contracts, Bus Madrid is able to upload suitable products and tariffs, making them available to MaaS operators. Step 2. Role of MaaS Madrid. MaaS Madrid wants to create a mobility package that includes Bus Madrid and Train Madrid components. MaaS Madrid defines the basic criteria of the anticipated mobility package, including name, transport providers, and start date. MaaS Madrid then consolidates products and tariffs that operators have already uploaded to the CMMP. MaaS Madrid defines the compensation each operator will receive for their contribution to the mobility package before checking summary details and signing the contract. Step 3. Notification of the transport provider. Bus Madrid is notified of the MaaS Madrid proposal and can analyze and approve the suggested mobility package, which includes its own 3-day pass. The contract is then accepted and signed by all operators contributing to the mobility package. MaaS Madrid cross-checks the various operator signatures which validate the contract before issuing confirmation to the traveller. Role of the travel user. Travel users can buy a mobility package quickly and easily using the dedicated app. Their purchase is stored in the My Mobility Packages section of the app. The consolidated itinerary can be reviewed here in full, providing a breakdown of the travel components and evidencing the cost-saving benefits to the traveller.
Thank you. Well, I hope you got more or less the idea with this video. I think it was a bit quickly, but I think the conclusions are clear. Thanks. We can go for the next slide. Yeah, this one. So I think the conclusion of this section is that in MaaSive we have developed interesting and innovative components such as the CMMP that is in charge of all these agreements. And we have also the mobility package sector, the mobility package orchestrator that is responsible of the backend operations. So I think we have seen that with this functionality is easy and quick. The creation and implementation of these mobility packages, and this is compatible with the validation legacy equipment of the TSPs. So this could be in a few clicks, we could have a mobility package implemented and ready for the users. So this is it. I hope you found it interesting, and I will wait for any questions, or you can contact me otherwise by email. Thanks.
Thank you, Juan, for this presentation. So just to follow on this presentation, we'll have another presenter from a MaaSive project, Norman Offel from Hakon, and he will talk to us about how we can plan our trips using MaaS developments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aneta. So my talk will be a bit like in the next 10 minutes, I will be more technically specific. As you could see in Marco Ferreira's presentation, how this works all in the app, I will be focusing on the back end and what's happening behind the scenes. And when we calculate in Shift2Real trips and offers. So the main challenge that we're facing is that an intermodal pan-European travel solution needs to be calculated, which takes into account the user request, so your individual specific settings within the app for this particular instance of a trip, but also the more general user preferences as stored on the cloud wallet of the travel companion. It also needs to take into account the contractual agreements and mobility package, as you've just seen in Juan Castro's presentation about the marketplace. On the general note, the travel solutions, so the trips and offers that we calculate here, are the foundation of most other functions within Shift2Real Innovation Program 4. So you need to have offers to book an issue and pay them later on. You also need to have a trip, for example, for the trip tracking functionalities. All of these also are enhanced by other functionalities such as multi-user capabilities and so on, which you will hear later. So when we talk about a pan-European journey planning system, you initially would think that you would integrate all of the timetable information that you can get from the travel service providers. However, that would be a very complex network and hard to compute on to calculate trips and offers. So our solution within Shift2Real was that we simplify the integrated network. We're still building it to get all of the benefits from it, to have an integration between travel service providers. But we need to reduce the complexity by eliminating details, and but still enable us with the network to calculate approximations of travel solutions. And those approximations then lead to a two-step journey planning approach, where in a second step we get the details from each trip leg of that approximation. The two-step journey planning approach, a bit more in detail here, is that when the app sends out a request to a travel shopping orchestrator, which is the component of the Shift2Real ecosystem, then this particular component would first request approximations from the meta network by a component that we call Meta Network Explorer. It generally is using the meta network as if it was a normal network of any kind of travel service provider you can think of. But in this case, we get an approximation. And the second step then is to identify potential actual transport service providers that are able to give you detailed information about their part of the overall pan-European trip that we are calculating right now. So the travel shopping orchestrator then via the interoperability framework to also ensure interoperability between the ecosystem and the travel service providers is requesting the travel service providers to calculate their detailed part of the trip. And upon responses, the travel shopping orchestrator will then aggregate those partial results into your overall travel solutions, as you would then get presented via the personal application. This all happens behind the scenes when you click on one button in the app, and it happens within a couple of seconds. So I was talking about the meta network because it's integrating timetable information. But what about the modes that do not offer timetable information? There was one specific task within MaaSive, and specifically addressed by demand responsive transport, for example, is that we need to find a way to integrate those transport modes directly, because so far the non-timetable based forms were indirectly part of the Shift2 ecosystem. What I'm trying to say is that even though the Shift2 ecosystem might have not been aware of such a service, the travel service providers already integrated, which are providing public transport timetable information, are also already integrating such modes of transport. So we would still get responses for those kind of transport modes, however, not directly via Shift2. So our intention was to directly integrate DRT services, for example, as one example of such transport modes. So how did we do this? We focused on other criteria, of course, since such services do not offer timetable information, we needed to find other ways. Those transport services are still defined by a service area within they operate, and we can still approximate their the duration of the trip you would need to take with those transport modes by their basic counterparts and geo information systems, such as bike or car, for example. And that's what we're doing here. So within the first journey planning step, the meta network not only uses the timetable information of those travel service providers that are able to offer them, but we are also using the service area information to identify those travel service providers without the timetable information, approximate their duration with a geo information system and their basic mode of transport, car or bike. And then in the second step, they are integrated as any other travel service provider. We identify that they are needed to be requested, and they will be requested and respond in kind as any other travel service provider. So to sum this all up, what we have achieved within Shift2 and MaaSive particularly is that we, for once, integrate the private transport. So walk, bike, your own bike or your own car via the general geoinformation system routing. We also integrate public transport, obviously, via the meta network. We additionally now focused on the integration of shared mobility, in particular demand responsive transport, via service area and GIS routing. And to top it all off and also put in place the last puzzle piece is that we have an automated integration of network data in the journey planning system. So as soon as there is an update or a new timetable information available to the ecosystem, the meta network will be calculated automatically and renewed. And upon any future request, this new meta network will be used and the information will be available to any end user in real time, so to say. And the same goes for shared mobility. All we need to have is service area and the basic mode of transport to integrate any kind of new shared mobility. So thank you for your attention. I hope that was interesting to you. And I'm looking forward to your questions later.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you indeed. Moving on. Our next presenter is actually from Shift2MaaS project, and it's Marco Comerio from Ferreira, and he will be talking to us about the approach taken by Shift2MaaS for the pilots that were taking place within the project. Marco, over to you.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Marco Comerio from Ferreira, and my presentation is about the description of the approach taken by Shift2MaaS for the definition of scenario and use cases for the pilots. Next, please. So first of all, two basic principles we adopt. The first one is that the passenger must be at the center of the travel experience. So the focus is on the passenger. But in order to define new mobility scenarios and to enable more attractive travel experience, we need to involve in collaborative activities, in a collaborative design, all the other stakeholders involved in the sector, so the transport service provider, the technology provider, and the mobility expert. Next. And what we adopt is an approach composed by 4 different steps. In the first one, we start discovering the project. In the second one, we focus on the current travel experience in a demo site. So we define what we call as-is scenarios. Then we think we design the future mobility. We design the to-be scenario, and at the end, we are ready to deliver use cases for the pilot and the recommendation for future development. Next. So let's start with the first step. Here, we need to discover the project in order to understand what the scope and the objective are. And in order to do so, we need to collect needed opportunities and define high-level user journey. Next. And let's say to collect needed opportunity, we put in place different questionnaire and services survey to key stakeholders in order to assess from one side the available technology, but also to acquire knowledge on the demo site. And last but not least, also to collect vision and the ambition for the project from the perspective of both the IP4 technology provider, but also from the perspective of the TSP involved in the Shift2MaaS project. Next. In order to, let's say, concretize the study of the mobility in the demo site, we start defining a set of high-level user journey that are itineraries at the demo site covered by services offered by the TSP involved in the project. Here we have an example in Lisbon. It's an itinerary from the University Nova de Lisboa to the Lisbon airport, covered by services of Caris, Email, and Fertagus that are the TSP involved in the Shift2MaaS project. Next. So now we are ready for the second step. We are ready to understand the as-is, to understand how a person performs a specific travel experience in the demo site. And the scope is to identify current pain points and opportunities through collaborative activities and complementary research method. Next. We start defining personas. So we would like to focus on specific personas like Mark Smith, you see in the slide, that is a business traveler with specific behavior, goals, need, and experience level. And we used these personas to, let's say, characterize better the travel experience of in the demo site. Next. Then we organize a workshop. We call it the as-is workshop, in which, starting from the high-level user journey, we perform a collaborative activity with the involvement of both the IP4 technology provider, key stakeholder in Lisbon, in Malaga, in Central East Corridor, so the 3 demo sites of the Shift2MaaS project, to collect information on point of strength and weaknesses of the current travel experience in the demo site. And we focus on a specific travel experience like the journey planning, the ticketing, the usage of mobility package, inspection and validation of tickets, navigation at the interchange, and the management of delays and disruption. Next. The results of the workshop, of the ASIS workshop, is a map that is a user journey map that defines a clear picture of existing problems and areas of improvement in the demo site. Next. For example, in the exercise we made in Lisbon with the personas of Mark Smith, so the business traveler mentioned before, we discovered that it could be a pain point related to difficulties in journey planning. So when Mark is moving from the university to the airport, he is confused about the best travel solution to use, since there is not a single app to be used to check the best trip to use, to select. Moreover, next. Along the trip, Mark needs to buy several tickets to get on board on the light train and the train and the bus, and as to validate them each time. Next. So basically, after the creation of the ASIS user journey map, we have a clear idea of which are the current pain point and area of improvement in the demo site. So we are ready for the third step, but is related to the design, the to-be scenario, so to ideate and build new mobility scenario through collaborative activities. And next, in order to do so, we organize another workshop, that is the to-be workshop, with the same stakeholder. And in this case, the scope is to ideate and brainstorm the new travel experience, solving the identified pain point and enhancing the current travel experience using the new available technologies. Next. And the result is a new map, is a new user journey map that draw a clear picture of the to-be travel experience. Next. For example, the problems we highlight in the ASIS user journey map related to difficulties in planning and multiple ticket buying are now solved in the new travel experience thanks to the availability of the IP4 travel companion that support our personas Mark in moving from the university to the airport, since Mark can use the travel companion during the journey planning and directly buy all the ticket he needs along the trip. And he has only to remember to validate the ticket along the journey. Next. So after the creation of the to-be user journey map, we are ready for the last step of the Shift2MaaS approach. In this step, we define use cases for the pilot and recommendation for future development. Next. So travel experience that are already covered by Shift2Rail IP4 technologies becomes use cases. Use cases that represent technical specification for the Shift2MaaS pilot. For example, the travel companion is available, the possibility to buy ticket is already supported, so the journey planning and offer building and ticket issuing becomes use cases that were tested by Shift2MaaS at the 3 demo sites. Next. Other new travel experience included in the to-be scenarios that are not currently supported by IP4 becomes a recommendation for future development. For example, in Lisbon, we collect an interest in having a check-in, check-out process to be used during the journey, in order to avoid to buy all the ticket at the planning phase and to perform the payment only at the end of the trip. And this is something we collect during the to-be workshop with the key stakeholder, and becomes a recommendation for IP4 for future development. And that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marco. In fact, we will be now moving to your colleague, João Ferreira from Caris, who will be talking. I'm sorry, João, for mispronouncing your name. So João is here to talk to us about mobility packages and ticketing experience that is based on the Lisbon pilot. João, I'm going to give the floor to you now.
Thank you very much. Hello, good morning to everyone. I would start by saying by thanking the invitation to be present in this event, but I think more importantly the opportunity that was given to Carris, which is the bus and tram operator of the city of Lisbon, to be part of this constellation of projects that is addressing such an interesting and exciting issue. Like you just said. I'll be talking today about the experience that we developed in the framework of Shift2MaaS in the city of Lisbon by developing one pilot focused on mobility packages, ticketing, and mobility as a service in general. Next slide, please. So what we aim to achieve with the Shift2MaaS Lisbon pilot was basically to link the technologies that are being developed in the framework of IP4 and which we had a chance to learn earlier this morning with the transport operators and the providers of the various mobility services, and of course, most importantly, with the passengers, which are, like Marco just said, at the center of all our work. And we did these links with three objectives. First of all, we wanted to assess the readiness from the operator side, so to what extent we transport operators are ready to implement this kind of technologies. But we also wanted to identify what kind of issues that might remain in the development of the technologies, of course. And finally, again, close this circle by validating with passengers at the conceptual phase and at the use case level what kind of expectations they had in this area. So this was the main objectives of the Lisbon pilot. Next slide. And just allow me to tell a bit the story of why we think the Lisbon case was important for this project. First of all, because we managed to engage a lot of different transport operators. So not only public transport, but also ML, which was a partner that works with cars, with passenger cars and shared bikes. And we had both light and heavy rail, we had buses. So I think this was quite an important diversity, but also worth noting that a particular aspect of the transport ticketing system in Lisbon is that it is highly integrated. So we already have a very high level of integration through a Calypso-based ticketing system, which makes it super complex because we have so many players, both public and private entities, which can actually become a barrier for further integration. And this is one of the motivations that we also had to participate in this project. And I would like to underline that as transport operators, we were really keen to engage with Shift2Rail in this activity because we believe digitalization is a major trend in public transport and it's a major trend that brings challenges but also big opportunities, and we believe that is quite important. Then we also see multimodality as becoming the new normal. So From a passenger perspective, I think those days in which people would have a single mode of transport are due. So we now have a reality in which we have a lot of different people using a lot of different modes. And so mobility as a service and its implementation is a big need for cities and for public transport operators. So like was said basically before, MaaS provides an opportunity to put public transport at the center of the mobility system in a city, and of course that's super important for us. Next slide. So what did we aim to do within the Lisbon pilot? I won't go into much detail because Mark already explained a bit. I would just like to underline that we wanted to test functionalities from the perspective of public transport operators. This is very important. And from the perspective of customers. So we did a lot of meetings, workshops, and participatory processes, like Mark already described before, Marco Comerio. We have more than one Marco in this project, sorry for that. We had a lot of workshops in which we actually defined the use cases, and so we had a very detailed plan to implement the Lisbon pilot with these two big pillars, the tests from the perspective of the public transport operator and the perspective of the customers, which again are at the center of our activities. Next slide. Then I don't need to tell you what happened. The streets went empty. The attentions of public transport operators completely shifted away from projects like this into some sort of survival mode to address the COVID crisis. Also, the whole concept of collaborative projects, which is actually what we are doing here, it's the core of what we are doing here, had to change. But we didn't stop working, and this is an important message. I mean, and this event is maybe another proof of this. We managed to collaborate together, and so what we had to do actually, and I would ask you to pass on to the next slide, was to develop a contingency plan. And the basis of this contingency plan was that we wanted to keep the ambitions in terms of the transport service providers pilot. Our understanding is that there was basically no need to reduce the ambition because the transport service providers are easier to engage through digital mechanisms. And then to try to cover the perspective of the customer, we decided to separate two pilots, which was one indoor pilot. We called it an indoor pilot. We basically tried to translate all the functionalities to allow a testing through internet, so something that you can make from home. And then we also developed an outdoor pilot. This was quite challenging because we had to deal with different public safety rules at different moments, but we managed to also implement an outdoor pilot in which actually we had a group of people testing the functionalities out there. And of course, we wanted to keep our focus on the understanding of how IP4 technologies can enhance MaaS deployment. What does this mean? We really wanted to focus on use cases in which people would navigate through different modes of transport and use different operators. And this was something that was substantially important for us. Next slide. These are just some basic conclusions from our pilot in Lisbon. From the operator's perspective and focusing more on the so-called CMMP, I think important conclusion is that the TSP, so the transport service providers, recognize the benefit of this tool. So we, and I speak here on behalf of several transport operators, we believe that tools like the CMMP can support the implementation of mobility as a service because it can make it easier for us to gather on a virtual room or in an application where we can edit our products and services. It was possible to create mobility packages, so there was success in the completion of this task. Although, of course, user experience needs some work. There is a word missing here, needs work. Needs some work. There are some aspects to be improved, but importantly, I would underline the recognition of the benefit of the tool and of the successful creation of the mobility packages. And in the end of the day, we believe that the most important is also to address legal questions and to build trust between the transport operators. So while some legal questions are questions of detail, there is an overarching issue, which is the need to build trust. I'll get back to that more towards the end of the presentation. From the perspective of passengers, I think main conclusions was that most of the issues that we identified in the workshops are being addressed by the project constellation. So I don't think there are areas that we saw that this kind of user need or use case is not actually being addressed by the technological side of the projects. No, that was not the case, and I think that's an important conclusion. Then it was possible, both in the indoor and outdoor pilots, it was possible to successfully plan trips, validate tickets, and implement inspection processes, which is also important for the transport operators. Regardless of, again, some need to work on user experience, but I think that's something that would be kind of expected if we look at the TRL levels that we are working on in these projects. Next slide. These are just some pictures of our outdoor pilot, so that you get a chance to see that we were actually using the tools in our buses and trains and trams. Okay, so just to make sure that you get to see that. And to finalize, I would like to start by focusing on the technology side. I think the main conclusion that we had here is that, of course, challenges persist in terms of the technology readiness and development processes, but we would like also to attain attention of participants to the issue of technological transition. So it's not only about to develop the new technologies, it's also on working how this can be implemented and make compatible with what we have in terms of legacy technologies and solutions, because we cannot replace one system by another overnight. We have to work with the different systems. And so I think this is an important aspect to be considered in future activities in this area. Then another thing I would like to say, of course, coming from a public transport operator, is that we also need to consider the perspective of those offering the services in the market, be them public transport or other kinds of services, because technology can help in this front. So there are technology barriers that can be overcome and can facilitate collaboration. But more than anything else, like I said before, we need trust. We need to make sure that we find ways that facilitate the collaboration of entities that actually tend to compete with each other. Like I said, the customer now wants a fully interoperable system. He wants to use all different modes as it sees fit. So we need to move in that direction, but we have to understand that to some extent the operators are competing with each other. So there is a key need to focus on building trust between these various partners, and I truly believe that this is a win-win-win situation for all. In terms of recommendations, I think there is still room and the need for flagship initiatives like this one, because if we let the market develop all the mobility as a service and ticketing implementation solutions, we are probably going to see that relevant market segments are going to be left out. I will give two examples that actually worked in Shift2MaaS. One of them is this international traveler, because international travelers, they might be only a small part of the demand. So it might, and very difficult use cases, because they imply a lot of integration between very distant players. But if we want to make really seamless travel across Europe, we need to work on international travelers. Another example that we also covered in Shift2MaaS is people with reduced mobility. Another example of a relatively small, unfortunately is not that small, but very significant part of the population that needs mobility and which can really benefit from these initiatives. But if we are going to wait for the markets to provide solutions to them, it's probably not going to happen. So there is a need for this kind of flagship initiatives to have public research and investment pushing for them. And last but not least, I think there is a need for integration with other EU funding schemes. And I'll finalize by saying that in the case of Lisbon, for instance, we are working on changing our ticketing systems, revamping them, modernize them with Connecting Europe Facility funding. And we are working on these more research initiatives like Shift2MaaS, which actually are telling us what we can do and how we can better exploit the investment in these technologies in Connecting Europe Facility. And I think this is an important message that I would like to finalize with is that exploring these synergies between the different funding schemes, both from EU and national, is super important, because in order to make this digital transition, we are going to need to change a lot of our ticketing systems, but we are also going to need to define business model, to define new approaches, and that's something that we can definitely work together in the framework of Shift2Rail, but also other funding projects. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much, and sorry if I took a couple of minutes more. Thank you.
Thank you, João. Thank you very much. So that presentation brings us to the end of the first block of presentations that we've planned for today. And indeed, we allow now for some questions, should you have any. So for any questions you may have regarding the presented information, you can use the Ask a Question button that you should be able to see on your screen. Since we've had several presentations per the session, if you could add a name of the presenter that you are asking your question to. I mean, some questions may be obvious, but some may not. So yes, so please use this facility now. Also, just so you know, for the questions that we will not have time to answer, we will be sending our answers later on to all registered participants of this event. So even if we don't have a chance to answer live, you may still have opportunity to actually have your question answered. So let's see if we do have some questions from the public. And yes, there is one which I think should be addressed to Juan Manuel Castro. Juan, there is a question which is, can you create mobility packages including micro-mobilities such as e-scooters rental? So Juan, if you're with us,
yeah, of
you
course.
are. Let me just send you live.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So the answer is yes. I mean, there is no technical barrier to include micromobility like scooters, as you said. In this case, we will include it as, for example, as minutes, like 20 minutes of mobility, I mean, or e-scooter to rental. And in this case, there will be no since these mobilities do not have like validation equipment, it will be connected to the ticketing one. And since we have already done it in for other mode of transport, so in Shift2Rail ecosystem, we are able to issue tickets from the TSPs itself. As I commented before, in this case, even though there is no validation part, there is no technical barrier to include any sort of micro-mobility in the IP4 ecosystem, and in particular in the mobility packages. I hope it clarified the question.
Thank you, Juan. So if there is a follow-up question, indeed, you may use the same functionality. So please do post it if that requires any further clarification. And I'm conscious of time at the moment, so we will take other questions, and we'll Oh, actually, okay, let's answer one more question then that just came through. So we have another question which says, is it foreseen to add waterborne transport services to the travel companion? So is there anyone who would like to take this?
I could take this, Norman.
Okay. Norman, 1 second. Let me send you live. Go on.
Yeah, so we are not limited to transport modes. In fact, as I would expect a waterborne transport service, such as ferry, for example, to have some relation to a time schedule. Usually you have it integrated with public transport, at least here in Hanover, for example. Cheers to Istra. Where it's part of the timetable information. If it's not, then it's still not really a problem. So might be an interesting use case. I don't think that we have it yet, but that would not be a problem to us.
Thank you, Norman. Okay, one more question, and then we will break. There is a question which reads, is IP4 system a way of satisfying TSP direct distribution needs only? If not, how would an independent travel agency participate in the IP4 ecosystem? Do we have anyone who would like to answer this question, please? Juan, can you please take this one?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So the way that the ecosystem is built is to connect users with the TSPs directly. But we can imagine that this is not, we have not worked in this direction, but since the components that are developed in IP4 are independent, we can imagine that an agency develops its own travel companion and can connect to the whole backend that is developed in IP4.
Okay, thank you, Juan, and hopefully that satisfied the person who asked this question. If not, please do send us follow-up questions. And I think we will now go to the planned break that we had. Indeed, we will be back with the remaining presentations after lunch break, which is planned to finish at 1 p.m. Central European time. So that will be 12 for our British and Portuguese colleagues. So please rejoin us at 1 p.m. And we will be back with more presentations. Thank you all.